Hello, beauties. Welcome back to Midlife by Human Design. Y'all have been really liking the sexy episodes that I've been putting out, so no pun intended. I thought it might be time to put out another one. So I wanted to talk today about libido, which is definitely a topic of conversation for those of us in midlife, as our hormones can wreak havoc on our libido. And plus also, as Linda River Valente and I explored in episode 109, it's not only about hormones. So I want to talk more about the emotional solar plexus today. And before I get into that, though, if you are listening and have caught a few episodes and you're digging Midlife by Human Design, but you are not yet subscribed, it would be so amazing. And I would really, really appreciate it if you would kindly hit the subscribe button or the follow button wherever you are catching this. It really, really does help small creators like myself when you just subscribe. And all it means is you're going to get a reminder that the pod is out. And I've been releasing them on Mondays regularly for almost 2 years now. And as of late, they've been coming out a little bit later on some of these Mondays than in previous months. But hey, you're still getting it on Monday, so you're welcome. Your thank you to me is hitting that subscribe button, or if you're really digging an episode, sharing it with a friend. That would just be so amazing, and I would really, really appreciate it. So, why low libido? I mentioned that I'm going to talk about solar plexus gates, which I am, but I also want to just acknowledge the idea, the fact, the physical thing that happens in our body around hormones and hormonal changes. And I also want to say that some of those libido changes can be just where you're at with your relationship. It could be that you are totally ignoring what your authority is telling you. Could be that you're ignoring what your spleen is telling you in terms of what's safe and what's not. And it could be that you already really know the answer about why your libido is low. Maybe you're just feeling like you need a little bit more information before you take action. Hello, emotional authority. First thing I would say is book a midlife session with me so we can go deeper into your chart, because all of these episodes that I'm creating for you have the pieces and parts, but remember that you are a whole human. And when you look at your chart as a whole, it pulls those elements all together. And there are things that may be impacting what's happening for you that aren't necessarily what I'm talking about today, but are in conjunction with what I'm talking about today. So, for example, if you have an undefined emotional solar plexus, but you have some of these gates that I'm going to talk about, well, that's a different beast than if you have a defined solar plexus, for example. So I'll put the link in the show notes to book a session with me. I would love to help you work through some of these midlife issues. So, roots of low libido, specifically looking at the solar plexus. So there are two centers that are most commonly looked at when it comes to sexuality in human design, one being the sacral, which is the center for creation, for sexuality in that regard. And then the solar plexus, which is more about the emotional side of sex. So there are 3 different circuits in human design: the collective circuit, the individual circuit, and the tribal circuit. And the collective circuit, in relation to the channels that are in the solar plexus, the 2 channels of the collective circuit are on the outside. And I want to talk about these channels first, because these are channels where your desire is going to be ramped the fuck up. Like, you tend to be maybe a little bit more of the wild ones in the world when it comes to sex and when it comes to what you desire. And thinking about that as a midlife woman, to have this collective circuitry, which would be either the gate 30, which comes out of the solar plexus, reaching for the gate 41 in the root, the 3041 channel, or the 36 in the solar plexus, reaching up toward the 35 in the throat. So those outermost channels in the solar plexus. If you have either of those channels, then desire is really important to you. And specifically with the 3041, fantasy is really important to you. And you're gonna want to have sex when the moment strikes. It's like spontaneity can be a real turn on for you if you are into it, if you're into your partner still. And also fantasy. So this need to mix things up. So when we're talking about low libido, I was thinking about the interview with Linda River Valente, and she said something to the effect of like, maybe you just don't like the sex that you're having. And I thought about the channel 3041 as it relates to this, and it occurred to me like, wow, especially people who have this channel are probably going to get easily bored, or at least have the potential to get easily bored, especially if they fall into a rote kind of sexual experience with their partners where it's the same thing over and over again. That is not going to cut it. And your libido is going to tank if that's the case. So my question for you would be, how can you mix things up? How can you have a conversation with your partner about mixing things up? What might that look like to them? And of course, being aware of how this might land with your partner and being thoughtful about their feelings in terms of helping them understand that it's just, this is the mechanics of what works best for you. With the 3635, if you have the other collective channel coming out of the solar plexus, then this channel is not so much about fantasy, but definitely still about change, still about mixing it up, like different positions, different toys, different locations, different people, and, whatever floats your boat. And here's the thing. I want to publish these episodes to start normalizing what works for us as human beings mechanically for our sex drive, even though it may push back a bit on societal norms, which, hello, Aquarius rising, right? Like, of course I'm talking about this. And of course, 5-line, I'm talking about this. So I just really think that it's important for women, especially midlife women who have been in relationships for years potentially, and or are coming out of a long-term relationship and looking to redefine what this part of their lives look like. Knowing these things about yourself is a fucking game changer. Right? It's like, okay, maybe my libido is in the tank right now because I'm so fucking bored with the sex we're having. Or if I'm coming out of a long-term relationship and I'm starting to date again, knowing that, okay, if I decide that I'm going to start having sex again with this person that I'm seeing, then how can I have that conversation early on in the relationship to say, hey, I need a lot of variety, if you have 36, 35, for example. So if you don't have your chart, as you know, go to my website, go to get your chart, lorileeside.com. And look to see, do you have either of these channels, or do you have any of these gates in the collective? And just remember how important the idea of desire is. It's like you've got to have some sort of desire in order for sex to happen. If you don't have any desire, then yeah, your libido is going to be in the tank. The next set of channels that comes out of the solar plexus is the individual circuit. And individual circuitry is the channels that are in the middle. So the 39 in the root that reaches up to the 55 in the solar plexus, and then the 22 in the solar plexus that reaches up to the throat, gate 12. Individual circuitry, these people need time, in essence. They need time and they need a lot of communication. This is a words of affirmation are my love language kind of circuitry. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about this set of channels is because it takes so long to build that connection before you have sex, it's like sex is kind of the last part of this buildup, which you are creating through this communication, getting to know each other, sharing your deepest, darkest secrets, your love, your excitement about things, your connection, what you see in one another, what you love about the other person, romancing each other. This individual stream here is really about the romance. And when you get to that point in the relationship where you're finally turning it into something physical, if it's not good, then essentially it like desire just fizzles out. And that is a really interesting marker to have, and something, the mechanics of which is really important to know about yourself, to just understand like, wow, okay, maybe, for example, you got married and you have these waves, or you have some of these gates in your design. And maybe in combination, you have these waves with your partner. And potentially you were even one of those people who didn't have sex until they got married. You can tell, like, I'm like, what are these aliens walking the earth? But anyway, maybe that's how you roll. And in which case, if you got to your wedding night and the sex was like meh, and ever since then, you've just been hobbling along, and you're in midlife now, and you are ready for a change because your whole being is shifting as a midlife woman, and you're realizing that the mechanics just don't work with your partner, then that's a really important realization. And it's mechanical, right? It's like if the sex isn't really working, it's probably not ever going to work. Now, I want to say one caveat here, which is, remember, human design, number one, is an experiment. Number two, as I said earlier in the episode, these are just pieces and parts of the whole. It's not the whole relationship. I don't want you to go say, oh, well, Lori told me that this relationship is never going to work, so I'm just deep sixing it. You have to rely on your own authority. These are places for you to look in your chart and be like, oh, okay, maybe that's why. And you feel like you have an anchor somehow in your design that helps you to explain how you're feeling. And sometimes that's what you need to take action, to do the thing that potentially you already know that you want to do. The other thing I wanted to say about this individual stream, the 3955 and the 1222, is I wanted to share a quote that Ra said about this specific stream of sexuality, which is that it is better for the individual, because this is individual circuitry, It is better for the individual to love someone they cannot have than to have someone they do not love. So if you have 39, 55, 12, 22, if you have any of those gates, then this may really resonate with you like, oh, maybe I love the idea of unrequited love. Maybe there's something in unrequited love or the romance or the angst of not being able to have this person or a person, but having the person that I do have. Maybe there's something in there. Because the other thing that Ra calls these people is the suffering poets or the anguished artist. It's the people who suffer almost on purpose because then they create beautiful things out of it. So there is a lot of beauty that comes out of that, but there can also be a lot of tension there. The other thing I wanted to comment on about this stream in particular, as it relates to low libido, is romance. And thinking about oftentimes when you've been partnered for decades, the romance can pretty easily and quickly fall to the wayside, especially if you have kids, especially if you're trying to run a household together, working hard. Those things can fall away very easily. And so I think it's important to consider, where is the romance in your life? And if you have any of these gates, understand that that is an important component for you. If you've stopped taking time for one another in trade for the wham bam thank you ma'am, just getting it done, then how can you get back to long conversations? Maybe something as simple as like buying a deck of question cards for couples, or Googling what are some questions I can ask my partner if you need some help to just get started. One other thing I wanted to mention about these channels here. First of all, gate 39 is a real teasing kind of gate. It likes to tease. It just likes to play. It's provocative, right? It's the gate of provocation. So it appreciates teasing. That is a way of connecting. Whereas gate 55, which is its partner in that channel, is kind of moody. The 12, 22, 39, 55, this whole stream is very moody. So if you're not in the mood, no sex is going to happen. But it's also really indecisive. It's kind of like, I don't know. And then it'll change the subject. So if you're running into challenges, then maybe it's about getting back to the idea of those long conversations and trying to engage with each other through conversation to help that connection. Gate 12 and 22, if you have the full channel, definitely need to be speaking love, like words of affirmation, so important for gate 12. Gate 12 it's the gate of caution. So there's a little bit of hesitation there, which is part of that relationship building. It's part of that need to connect in order to kick on the libido. So if your partner has gate 12 and they are reluctant, thinking about what can you say to them? What can you tell them that you appreciate about them? And that kind of thing can really help. If you're the one with gate 12, then how can you explain to your partner that this is what you need in order to kick on your libido? It's sort of like a cheat code, which is similar to my episode on Cheat Codes 107. That'll give you more information about all of these. And then I wanted to talk about tribal. So the tribal circuitry is the 1949. The 19's in the root connected to the 49 in the solar plexus. And then the 3740, which the 37 is in the solar plexus and the 40 is in the heart center. So this is the internal set of channels. And tribal channels are all about bargains, essentially. They are about tit for tat. They're about, I'm going to do this and you're going to do that. And one of the things I've heard that has worked for some people when it comes to making sure that you keep sex as a primary part of your relationship is scheduling it, right? This is where that is coming from, is these tribal channels. The 3740 and the 1949 are going to be all about scheduling sex. They're going to be like, okay, we said Friday nights are our night. That is it. We do not go out with other people that night. This is our date night. We are going to just spend it, the two of us together, and then we're going to go home and have sex. And that is what we are doing. And if you want to do it on Sunday, well, no, we agreed that Friday was the night. So I'm going to make plans for myself on Sunday. Or Monday night, if you get horny, sorry, wait till Friday. This is the energy of the 1949 and the 3740. Versus if you have somebody who's a 4130 and you talk about scheduling sex, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? It's like, that is the anti-libido. So if scheduling sex sounds to you like exciting, like, okay, that would mean I'd get laid on the regular, then great, check your chart. See, do you have 1949? Do you have 3740? Does your partner? And if they don't, how can you compromise, right? Because working with another person is always about compromise. So how can you compromise with one another where, let's say your partner has some individual circuitry and you've got more tribal circuitry here? And maybe it's about making sure that on the days that you decide to schedule sex, that you make time for long conversations, that you break out that deck of cards with questions to ask one another, to get to know one another again. If you're partnered with somebody who has the 4130 or the 3536, then maybe it's about, okay, I really want to schedule sex. You like it kind of spontaneous and to be desire driven. How can we meld those two things together? You know, maybe we're going to do something super sexy on those days that's going to ramp up the desire. Maybe we're going to schedule a weekend away where we can be spontaneous during that weekend, but it's still like exciting for the person who has the collective circuitry. The other thing I wanted to remind you of with this tribal circuitry, the 1949 and the 3740, is how important touch is. So whereas for the 3955, you've got words of affirmation, with these guys, the 3740 and the 1949, you've got touch. Touch is so important for communication. And listen, if you have some of this circuitry and your partner never touches you, then your libido probably is tanking because you just don't have that connection. And you need it. This is like an energetic thing. So when your partner walks through the door, are you making physical contact somehow? You know, it doesn't mean that you have to meet them at the door in a towel and some lube in your hand. It just means like you give them a hug or you even just reach out to touch them. Some kind of touch is really important. So if you have any of these gate placements, does your partner know that? Do they know the importance of that? Do you want them to know that about you? If you said no to that last question, then that is more information for you. And then my other question for you in regards to touch being an important component for your libido would be how you like being touched. And knowing this, going back to the conversation again with Linda River Valente, starts with you. right? You understanding how you like to be touched means that you need to do that for yourself in order to understand what works for you. And then you can communicate it to your partners. So this tribal circuitry, it's like if you are telling them I love you and using words of affirmation, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? Like, show me the love. I need to physically feel the love or go do something for me. Again, about bargains and agreements. Like, okay, you're going to go clean the bathroom. Great. Nothing makes me hornier than that. So these are examples of where those pieces may come in if you have some of these gates, 1949 or 3740. So the one that I did not cover in this episode is the 659, because the 659 is really about creation. It's about sex for creation. It's also about creativity and creating things. It doesn't necessarily have to be people, but it's less, interestingly enough, less about the emotional component, more so about how do we have sex in order to procreate and make sure that there continue to be beautiful humans on this planet. That is literally what this energy of the 659 is all about. Okay, so a new thing that I would really love to start to do on the podcast is an ask and answer. So ask me a question and I will answer it on the pod. And what I want you to do is just DM me. So send me a message on either Instagram or Threads, or you can email me if you're on my email list, or you can use the contact form on my website. And tell me a question, just one simple question that you have that I can answer in like 5 minutes, tops. Because I want to be able to answer your questions at the end of my episodes to give you some more ideas of lived experience of human design. So, especially if you're listening to this and you are a friend of mine, send me a question to get us started. Even if I don't know you, send me a question and I would love, love, love to answer it through the lens of human design to help you out in this phase of midlife. And remember that if you are listening to all of this and you're like, shit, how do I actually do something with this? How do I make a difference in my life? Book a session with me and we can talk about it. So as always, I am wishing you the strength to let go of what no longer serves you, joy to fill your days, and clarity to be who you came here to be.